Gotcha. Okay. So, what's the first step, right? So, like, okay, I want to start a fund, and I mean, for me, my plan is to kind of like compete with those other hedge funds that are just buying and holding,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, what's step one for me?
So step one is okay.
Besides asking Veena to come onto the show.
Well, okay, you've already done step one. You've kind of identified what the overall business plan is. What we do at our company is then we'll go and we'll create a more in-depth business plan, right? So we'll really start looking at like targets. We'll look at pro formas. We'll look at kind of what it looks like over a 5-year hold, 7-year hold. Once you have all that and you're like, okay, now I know what I'm going out and doing. The first thing I do every time without a doubt is I call my securities attorney. And given how we started this show, it seems apt for you to do the same.
Absolutely.
And this is why. Because there are different exemptions that you can rely on. Because what you're doing when you raise capital for a real estate fund is you're selling a security. And so you want to make sure you have a certain exemption from registering those securities. So we utilize, there's three major exemptions that real estate relies on. One of them has 2 pieces to it. So I'll go through what the 4 buckets are. So first you have your Reg A raises. Those raises are very time consuming. They can take 6, 9, 12 months to set up properly. They probably cost about $150,000 to $200,000 to set them up.
9 to 12 months.
Yes. It's a very
100,
long
150
runway.
grand.
Yes, very long runway. But the benefit of it is you can raise capital from accredited or unaccredited investors in it, and you can publicly advertise it. So there's a lot of really good benefits to it, but it's a very high bar to overcome, especially if you're just starting out. So most people don't start with a Reg A. We've never done a Reg A.
Yeah, it's the first time I've actually had any kind of conversation about Reg A.
Really? Okay, yeah. It's because the bar is so high for it, right? And I think Pace is actually getting ready to set up a Reg A because he's been doing it for a while, right? And he has funds, he has experience, he has the resources to put in the time and the money to get it set up properly. So that's Reg A. Then you have one called Reg CF, which is Regulation Crowd Fund. And this regulation is actually like a baby Reg A. But the limitation on it is you can only raise $5 million on it.
Cap. That's it.
That's it. Yeah. Not $5 million and $1, not 5.1, not 6, not 10, 5. And so for the deals we transact on, we buy usually 200 plus units, 75 million and up. $5 million is like a rounding error on those deals. So I cannot use a Reg CF.
Is this the one that Grant Cardone was using a lot of?
He uses Reg A.
He uses Reg A.
Reg A, yeah.
Okay.
So because Reg A has a higher limit. I think it's like 75 million or something.
Right, but I mean, like, there was a time where he was just taking money from everybody, right? Accredited or not,
I think he does, and that's through the Reg A.
So Reg A, it doesn't have to be accredited only. It could be
correct. It can be both accredited or unaccredited.
Okay, so if I got like $2,500, I can invest in his Reg A.
I think you can. I don't know what his minimums are, but I think that sounds right.
Gotcha. Okay.
So yeah, so Reg A, Reg CF, actually all of them. There's no minimum. The sponsor sets a minimum.
Got it.
So then you have Reg D, which is my favorite exemption because it is. I think it's the most practical for how quickly real estate deals move, right? There's not a lot of deals where you can sit for like 6 months before you fund them. So Reg D has 2 pieces to Rule 506B and 506C.
Right.
I think I read somewhere that 506B is the most common exemption relied on. So what Reg D, Rule 506B says is you can raise as much money as you want from accredited investors and up to 35 unaccredited but sophisticated investors, which sounds great because you're like, oh, I can go out and raise all this money. Here's a caveat to it. You can only raise capital from people you have a pre-existing substantive relationship with, and you cannot publicly advertise it. So there's no general solicitation allowed on it.
So for the uninitiated, what does pre-existing and substantial relationship mean?
Yes. So the SEC is not very clear about this. I think most attorneys will give you the guidance, and this is why you need your securities attorney, because they will tell you exactly what they deem to be the bar. You should already have a very good idea of whether they're accredited or unaccredited when they come into your fund, right? So that's number one. Like, you have that much knowledge of them that you know what their standards are of whether they're accredited or not. Second, you probably know about, like their family. Maybe you know about who their kids are, where they vacation, where they went to undergrad. You have a substantial relationship. It's not someone that, you met at a networking event once and never talked to them ever again.
Right.
And now you're going back to raise capital from them. It probably wouldn't meet the bar. But there's no clear guideline. Like you have to have met 7 times and have talked for 2 hours total. It's not like that. It's kind of open to interpretation a little bit.
So I'm going to speak on the advice I've received. This is not, again, not legal advice.
Yes.
The advice I've received was you have to have them at least opt into your database.
Yes.
You need to have at least one conversation with them.
Yep.
Where you're not soliciting their money.
Correct.
Just talking about them
Yes.
and what they're trying to accomplish.
Yes.
And then the third time, at least after a third time.
Potentially, yes.
Yes, you can say, here's what I'm doing.
Yep.
Let me know if you're interested in it.
And I think that's the general advice most attorneys are going to give you.
Yeah.
And, here's the key. The key is documentation, right? Because if I meet you twice and I've spent 8 hours with you both times, that might be enough to meet that bar. It's so subjective, right? Yeah. And so it's definitely a gray area. So document. If, you are being asked these questions, then if you're able to say like, oh no, I know Steve, we did all these things and this is who he's married to and this is where he lives and this is where he went to college and this is the frat he was in, like all these things, the SEC might be like, okay, this is a pretty substantial relationship.
Right. This isn't like Glenn Ross where like you filled out a form.
Right.
And then we just took your money.
Right, exactly. That you don't want to do because that's probably not substantive. And you don't want to post about it on social media.
Right.
So
yeah, I do want to spend some time talking about this.
And we will, because this is an important, I think, distinction. So the Rule 506C under Reg D allows you to post on social media or to generally solicit, and you can raise as much capital as you want. It moves much faster, just like the 506B does. But the caveat of it is you cannot have even one unaccredited investor in your deal. And a big
I can post on social media, but everyone must be accredited.
Everybody. And a big difference in administrative hurdle between B and C raises is that on a B raise, because you have a pre-existing substantial relationship, you theoretically probably know what their profession is, if they're accredited or not. So you can rely on self-attestation for their accreditation status. So if I know you're accredited, you invest in my 506B, and then I give you a questionnaire and you tell me you're accredited and you sign saying that this is true and correct, that's likely enough to meet the hurdle for whether you're accredited or sophisticated.
Yeah.
Now in a 506C raise, even if you're like my best friend and you told me about all this money you made in the last like 10 years or you've been making money I know you have the net worth, I have to take reasonable steps to verify your accreditation status. And the SEC specifically says that self-attestation is not enough to meet that criteria.
Got it.
So what we do at our company is we have a third party give us a letter saying like, I'm a CPA in the state of California and I am familiar with Steve's financials. And according to, it's like Rule 501, whatever of the SEC, he is an accredited investor.
You want to hear something